At the age of 35, Frank Sinatra was at a crossroads in his career. But as author Bill Cherry remembers, old Blue Eyes got back on the road to stardom after a stopover in Galveston.
People past 60 who lived or came to this island in the old days love to tell the tales of when big-time stars headlined here. Nightclubs like the Sui Ren and the Hollywood Dinner Club and the Balinese Room and the Studio Lounge. They all booked entertainers like Fred Astaire, Perry Como, Harry James, even old Peanuts Hucko and his clarinet. And public relations man Christy Mitchell called them Galveston's golden days. But those golden days only had a span of about 30 years, from the 1920s through most of the 1950s. And you know, that sure is a small piece of time out of the 175 years the island's had civilized people living on it. My favorite story from that era is about old Frank Sinatra, who was down on his luck. You know, he was almost a has-been at 35, and we're talking about 1950. Desperate for a job, somehow he talked Houston oil man Glenn McCarthy into giving him a short gig at the Cork Club. It was a plush private night spot on top of McCarthy's famous Shamrock Hotel. Old Blue Eyes started driving to the island almost every afternoon. He came to pester Sam Maceo into letting him play the Balinese Room. He kept telling Maceo that if he didn't hire him, he'd have no place to go after the Cork Club. Finally, Big Sam said okay, but only as a singer with the house band. And what a come down that was for Sinatra. He'd always been a headliner. Nevertheless, Frank Sinatra came and he stayed in one of the island's second-rate hotels, the Towers. And he ate his meals around the corner on credit at Biagio DeAndre's Speedway Cafe. It was right next to Galveston's famous Mountain Speedway roller coaster. In 3 years, Sinatra's luck had changed, but not as a singer, as a movie star. He landed a starring role in the blockbuster of 1953, From Here to Eternity. But Sinatra never forgot his Galveston gig and the benevolence of Biagio DeAndre and his Speedway Cafe. A few years later, Sinatra campaigned for his friend John F. Kennedy. And when Kennedy won, he asked Sinatra if he had people he'd like to invite to the inauguration. And wouldn't you know who Sinatra picked? It was his friend at the Speedway Cafe, Biagio DeAndre. Biagio didn't get to go, but that invitation was thumbtacked on the wall behind the lunch counter for all to see until the Speedway closed years later. And by the way, Biagio told me that after From Here to Eternity, Sinatra settled up his tab at the cafe, every penny of it. I'm Galvestonian Bill Cherry, and Frank Sinatra's visit to Galveston is one of my memories.